All right, let's jump right into this explainer on the official Raajvyuh rules. We're going to completely decode the rulebook today, the goal being to turn you into an absolute master tactician on the board. Look, whether you're a novice, just getting a feel for pushing pawns, or a grandmaster who thrives on setting up these crazy complex traps, understanding the absolute hard and fast laws of this game is literally what separates the victors from the vanquished. So here is our game plan for today. We'll start with the world of Raajvyuh, move into the universal rules as our baseline, then hit the explorer rules, which are total game changers. After that, we'll dive into classic mode's last stand and finish up with the pawn revival reward. Okay, part 1, the world of Raajvyuh, a game of deep, multi-layered strategy. Raajvyuh is this incredibly visually rich game, but underneath that, it's all about deep, calculating strategy. To truly conquer the board, you have to intimately understand the laws governing your pieces. You know, this isn't just about moving from node to node. It's about anticipating the massive ripple effects of every single capture you make. The official rules we're unpacking today are absolute. There are no house rules here. Every single ability has a specific trigger, a specific target, and a very strict limitation. Getting a firm grip on those boundaries is your first real step to victory. Moving on to part 2, universal rules, the baseline. These are the laws of repetition and stalling. So the absolutely crucial thing to grasp here is the 5 repetition rule. Basically, Raajvyuh strictly prohibits unnecessarily dragging out the game. If both you and your opponent repeat the exact same board position 5 times in a row, like say you're both just bouncing your knights back and forth between the same 2 nodes, that's a mutual tie, a draw. But, and this is where it gets highly tactical, if you do it alone, just to stall the game while your opponent is actually trying to make normal progress, you suffer an instant penalty loss. Boom, game over. This forces everyone to constantly seek forward progression rather than, hiding behind repetitive stalling tactics. Let's look at part 3, Explorer Rules, Game Changers. This covers queen deaths and pawn promotions. The queen death rule creates this incredible action-reaction dynamic that I just love. Taking down the opponent's queen is obviously a huge milestone, right? And the game actually rewards the capture with an immediate, one-time extra move. You capture the queen, you get to go again instantly. But, and it's a big but, as a direct result, the victim's king permanently gains the cross-move ability for the rest of the match. So yeah, you take their most powerful piece, but you awaken their king, giving it way more mobility. It really forces you to ask, is that one extra move worth dealing with a super-empowered king for the rest of the game? And speaking of powerful pieces, that brings us to the pawn promotion rule, or what's known as king reach. If you manage to march your humbly little pawn all the way across the board to the opponent's starting king node, you hit the jackpot. The very second it reaches that specific start node, you get to instantly promote that pawn into a queen, a rook, a bishop, or a knight. It is a massive power spike, and it instantly takes on the movement rules of that new piece. But here is the catch, and you really have to remember this. It's a strict one-time deal. Only a single pawn can earn this king reach promotion per game. The whole game. Once any player pulls this off, no other pawns on the board, yours or your opponent's, can be promoted for the rest of the match. It turns pushing your pawn to that king start node into this highly contested, desperate race that can just completely flip the balance of power in an instant. All right, part 4, classic mode, last stand. This is all about surviving the endgame. 12. That is the magic number of desperation in Raajvyuh. The exact moment you lose your 12th piece to your opponent, the game automatically triggers your last stand. This is a singular game-saving moment where your back is against the wall and you're forced to choose one of 3 incredibly powerful abilities. But you have to choose carefully. Why? Because the moment you pick one, you permanently sacrifice your access to the other 2. So you get 3 lifelines, and each one is tied to a specific piece. First, you've got the Knight's Teleport, which lets you instantly swap locations with any friendly piece on the board. Second is the Rook's Shield, creating a protective barrier. And third is the Bishop's Escape. If you map out the escape on the grid, it involves precise movement across the numbered nodes. For example, shifting an attacker from node 23, jumping over the bishop at node 24 so they land on 25. Let's actually break down exactly how a couple of these defensive options work in practice. Let's look closely at the shield first, and keep in mind how this all plays out on the digital board interface, where you're constantly sweating over the active timer and that captured pieces counter down at the bottom. The shield applies exclusively to the rook. When you activate it, it completely absorbs the first attack that lands on the rook, causing that attack to just fail outright. The rook survives totally unharmed, and the shield is consumed.
Basically, it buys you exactly one free pass against a deadly strike. Just remember, any follow-up attack on a later turn will capture the rook normally.
Now, as an alternative, the bishop's escape is highly positional. It relies entirely on that grid logic of the numbered nodes we mentioned. When an opponent moves into attack, their piece is forced to literally jump over your bishop to the next valid node in that line. Say they're attacking from node 17, they jump right over you to node 21. Your bishop survives the hit, and then you immediately get to slide your bishop to a valid, empty adjacent node. That can be forward, backward, left, or right. It's essentially a dodge and reposition maneuver all in one fluid motion.
So, just to lock that last stand arsenal in your mind, teleport for immediate repositioning of your knight, shield for a guaranteed one-hit defense on your rook, and escape for a super clever evasion tactic with your bishop. Which one you pick totally dictates your endgame survival strategy, and since they are strictly one-time uses, timing is absolutely everything.
Finally, part 5, the Pawn Revival Reward, which is all about rewarding the aggressor.
Remember how we just said losing 12 pieces gives the losing player a last stand? Well, it's a two-way street. If you're the player who successfully captures your opponent's 12th piece, you trigger the highly coveted Pawn Revival Reward. The game doesn't just throw a lifeline to the player who's losing, it equally rewards the aggressor for pulling off a highly successful offensive campaign. This is a massive, one-time reward that lets you bring one of your previously captured pawns completely back from the dead. You just select a captured pawn and place it directly onto an empty node that is right next to your king. Instantly, you've got a revived defender, or maybe a brand new piece to start pushing for that king reach promotion race we talked about earlier.
But there is a really important tactical wrinkle here regarding placement. The revived pawn must be placed on an empty, adjacent node to your king. If your king is completely boxed in by other pieces, if he's feeling a little claustrophobic in there, you actually cannot use the revival reward right away. You literally have to wait until an adjacent space clears up to bring your pawn back onto the board. It really forces you to manage your king's personal space carefully during the late game.
So, when you put it all together, knowing how these intricate rules restrict your movement through penalties, how they empower you through queen deaths and promotions, and how they pull you back from the absolute brink of defeat with last stands and revivals, how are you going to forge your unique path to victory? The rulebook hands you the tools, but the execution of these tactics, well, that's entirely up to you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing the board, and I'll see you next time.